Coming up on Newswatch in Focus, the heat and drought conditions continue to affect the people and wildlife of East Central Illinois. Tonight we'll talk to an area nature center that's seeing the dry up cause problems for their wildlife, especially the fish. And we'll take a look at what made local headlines this week on Newswatch. All that and more is coming up, so stay tuned. Newswatch in Focus starts now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Newswatch in Focus takes an in-depth look at the latest news stories from the greater Mattoon and Charleston area, as well as those surrounding it each week. Our topic this week is drought conditions and how they're affecting area wildlife, especially at the Douglas-Hart Nature Center near Mattoon. We'll talk more about that to our in-studio guests in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at what made headlines this week on WEIU Newswatch. A 25-year-old Windsor man drowned in Lake Mattoon last weekend. The Shelby County dive team recovered the body of Jesse Storm near the beach. Newswatch's Andrew Benson reports.
He was just having like a normal day at the beach. He was on his raft. He was hanging with his friends.
It ended up, it was a individual that was swimming at the beach, and subsequently rescue teams arrived. Several area dive teams arrived. And as of now, we've located the body and we're moving it from the scene.
He was like 5 feet from me, swimming backwards. I could see him going under and stuff, but his friends were right there.
Savannah Thomas and her friend Rachel St. John were both at Lake Mattoon swimming Sunday afternoon, and both had been around 25-year-old Jesse Storm. St. John says Storm was on a raft that got away from him.
Like past the buoys, and then he fell off his raft and the waves were taking it, and he went to chase after it for maybe 100 feet maybe, and after that, he decided that he couldn't handle it anymore, so he started swimming back.
He was swimming on his back, and his face kept going underwater, and he was spitting water. But I thought that he was just really tired.
According to the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, St. John went under and never resurfaced.
And while we were swimming out to get the raft, we passed him, and he was swimming backwards and kind of struggling, but that was the last time we saw him.
Those who live around the lake say what happened is a tragedy. Donald Hildebrandt spends a lot of time looking at the lake, and what he saw yesterday was heartbreaking.
After, we're here a little over 8 years, and I don't recall anything like this happening before.
It made me feel really bad because it made me feel like it was my fault.
Our Newswatch team contacted the Shelby County coroner about an autopsy. They told them that one will not be completed. 10 different agencies responded to the beach to assist in the search effort. And another situation in Coles County turned fatal on the same day. The Coles County Sheriff's Department says around 9 last Sunday night they were called to Interstate 57 from the Old State Road Bridge in Lafayette Township after reports a woman had fallen from the structure. The victim's name is not being released, and the Sheriff's Department says they're investigating the case as a possible suicide. And in court, a Coles County woman pleads guilty to causing an accident that killed 3 children. Earlier this week, Sandra Ross of Mattoon pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated DUI. Police say on June 1st last year, Ross was driving a van full of people to Charleston with marijuana in her system when she lost control of the vehicle, swerved, and ran into the path of a grain truck. Sentencing has been set for September 5th. And seniors in Illinois say they're concerned about how they'll pay for their prescription medication. The state eliminated the Illinois prescription drug program this week, which helps low-income seniors pay for their medicine. Newswatch's Seisha Gailliard learned more on these cuts by seniors who will be affected.
Last month, Governor Pat Quinn signed the SMART Act that cut more than $1.5 billion in state programs, including the prescription drug program. And that means more than 150,000 seniors across the state may have to take care of the prescription cost on their own.
There won't be any money to buy them.
Prescription drugs, that is. Now seniors across Illinois will have to pay both prescription drug premium and copay cost without the state's help. But some people aren't aware, and they're in for a surprise at the pickup window.
Some people that don't even open their mail, maybe. So there will be some people that won't realize that this has happened until they go to the pharmacy the next time to pick up their medicines.
Okay, you're all set. Thanks so much.
But those that are aware of the cut say they're not looking forward to what this means for the future.
Because we're living on a fixed income, and it's going to affect us greatly in the future.
Which means Carol Stuckemeyer may have to eliminate some prescription drugs, and she says she isn't happy with the decisions the state is making.
We're out here working on these highways and spending millions of dollars, and I don't know which is the most important. Hurry up and get through on a highway, or keep people healthy and for having medication.
In the meantime, many seniors have to make even bigger decisions.
They're going to have to choose between their medicines, their electric bill, or eating, and I'm afraid that they're not going to choose their medicines.
Effingham Senior Center Program Supervisor Linda Warner advises people to not stop taking their medication altogether. Instead, she advises seniors to
just talk with their physician. Are there generics that they can take that are going to cost them less money?
A former Eastern Illinois University police officer says he's not guilty of committing fraud. The Coles County State's Attorney's Office says 53-year-old Brian Shull of Effingham faces a misdemeanor charge of civil service examination fraud. Ferguson says the charge comes after Shull allegedly obtained answers to an Illinois civil service examination he was taking for a promotion. Shull resigned after the investigation started in 2009. The case came to a halt until it was brought to State's Attorney Steve Ferguson's attention last year. Shull returns to court July 11th for a status hearing. And finally, another area place feeling the heat is the Douglas-Hart Nature Center near Mattoon. Grounds are drying up and animals, well, they're searching for new places to find water. We'll talk to Dakota Radford from the Douglas-Hart Nature Center next about the situation, what it looks like, and what they're doing to handle it. But first, here's a look at the coverage on this topic from the Newswatch team.
It was less than a week ago. Kids were playing here. Now, this is all that remains.
Well, anytime you get this kind of heat and it heats up the water, the water will actually hold less oxygen as it gets warmer.
And so the larger fish tend to die first, which often includes channel catfish, then largemouth bass, and then often the larger bluegill.
Bluegill, just like those that are swimming in Paula Kersey's nearby pond.
The symptoms that the fish actually express is that generally in the mornings you'll see them coming to the surface, and it may look like they're feeding, but they're actually gulping oxygen from the surface.
And you will always see a fish protecting its bed, but it's so shallow that they won't.
And it's not just the heat the fish are battling.
We don't normally see them that often, and we're seeing them a lot more often now. And when they get too close to the bank, we're seeing them like caught up in the moss, which we don't normally have as much of.
A battle fish could end up losing.
And the algae covers the entire pond, and the algae will eat up the oxygen, so the fish that are there that do have enough water aren't even getting enough oxygen from the water because of the algae. We can only hypothesize how it's going to affect my wildlife populations here. So we're not going to see the true effects this year. We're going to see them in the years to come.
Wonder where we get our story inspirations from? Make sure to tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30 right here on WEIU to find out. Newswatch in Focus takes a local story from the week that was featured on Newswatch and goes more in depth. For more local news, weather, and sports, tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30. And we're back with Dakota Radford, the assistant educator at Douglas-Hart Nature Center. And Dakota, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. It's great to be here.
And so there's a little bit of a dryness situation going on at Douglas-Hart. Can you kind of paint the picture for us?
Well, if you've been outside, you're probably aware of how dry it is. And if you go down to the Douglas-Hart property outside of Mattoon, you're going to notice right away when you set out on your walk, cracks running through the trails, like crevices going into the earth where it's gotten so dry that the gravel and the earth blow are just pulling away from each other. And if you make it down through the woods, it's actually a little bit shaded there, so you might survive the hot hike. If you make it down to the wetland, you'll notice that it's bone dry down there. Hardly a puddle left at this point. We had water only a week ago, but it's already disappeared, and it's just getting drier. And it's gotten to the point that there are just, cakes of mud that are separated by these huge crevices. And the kids are always the first to see the fish skeletons littering the area. And it's actually pretty neat to go out and see all the life that was under the water that you couldn't see. Now you can see the remains of it when the water's gone.
Okay. So a lot of water going away, and we not enough rain. So what does that mean for the wildlife at Douglas-Hart? I mean, are you seeing direct effects there?
It's very hard on the wildlife. They depend on that water for everything from, you know, obviously water to drink, but they also depend on it to feed the plants that produce the shelter and the food that they rely on. So when this a drought like this occurs, the plants start dying back. The plants aren't able to produce fruit.
Okay.
One of the concerns is that we might see almost no acorn production later this year because the trees are doing all they can just to survive.
Okay.
They just can't put extra energy into making fruit. And then that in turn really affects the wildlife that completely depend on that food supply for their survival. So their energy is reduced then, and then when it's time for them to reproduce, which this is kind of baby season at the Nature Center. So with all that reduced energy, we're gonna see reduced population over kind of in the more long run over the next few years as a result of this kind of weather.
Okay, so it really doesn't have just short-term effects, it's a long-ranging thing.
That's right. Some of the effects are very short-term. Actually, a lot of the more visual things, such as the dried earth and the reduced, the death of the fish populations and all, those will go away after the water returns. But some of those other things like population numbers and the more cyclical events are going to be more far-reaching.
Okay. So, you know, I'm sure when people come out there and they see all these fish skeletons, is that a worry? I mean, the fish are dying. Will they come back? How do they get there?
It is upsetting to see, and fortunately we do have a pond in our woodlands, and the cover of the trees as well as the greater depth of that pond means that we're able to retain so far a few feet of water in that still. We're hoping that the course of the summer doesn't take that away from us, but in past years that little source of water has been able to maintain a fish population that then spills over in the next heavy rain into our wetlands and replenishes it. So nature is really resilient and is able to overcome this stuff. But if you reach those maximums, those extremes where even the pond goes dry or the last male frog dies, you know, that's when things tip and suddenly you are not seeing that species at all on the site.
Okay. And so what about birds? Are you having trouble with birds? Are they going elsewhere for water and things?
And birds are a huge concern because they depend so heavily on those wetland stops for their migration patterns. We were fortunate enough to have green herons, egrets, great blue herons, and even some sandhill cranes visit our wetland this spring.
Okay.
And we're just not seeing those shorebirds now that the wetland has dried up, of course. And we can only hope that they found somewhere else to go. Luckily, there are still some pockets of water in the area, so we can hope that they're there. But as they're getting kind of crowded into those last spaces, they're going to be competing for resources. Things like coyotes and other predators are just going to come in and have a very easy meal with all those crowded animals.
So you're hoping that maybe if they found refuge, they'll come back when the water comes back?
They will come back. We're just hoping that, you know, their populations aren't horribly affected, which if we're able to turn the drought around, I think we've still got a hope there.
Okay. And so how severe is this situation? You know, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, is this pretty bad or is it mild?
It really isn't a huge concern right now. The real concern is the outlook of the rest of the summer.
Okay.
Usually it is rather normal for our wetland to run near dry or dry, but not until the end of the summer when we start getting into those extra hot and dry months like August. And to have that already occur makes us a little worried because this might lead to a severe situation. Worse than what we've had before.
Maybe down the road. Okay, so is this something that's happened other summers then? Is this a regular occurrence?
Like I said, the wetland does usually go dry, so there is that natural fluctuation to nature. It's kind of the life and death cycles. But we're worried that if things get worse this year, we could reach one of those maximums, those kind of thresholds where we lose a species that used to be there, or something else like that. We dramatically decrease some population that we're trying to support.
Okay, and what kind of long-range effects does that have, if species are reduced?
Well, hopefully we'll be able to, through habitat restoration and through offering our site as a refuge in the future, be able to kind of nurture the different wildlife populations back up. That's always our hope. But with some of these species that do have dwindling numbers, like the sandhill crane and some of the small ground birds of our area, the grouse and such, we just have to worry that, how much value do we put on that one bird that died this year when it's one of the few remaining.
Okay. So what is Douglas-Hart doing, if anything, during a situation like this?
There's very little that we can do. We are working hard to keep our poor young plants that we worked so hard to get in the ground this spring from dying. So a lot of watering efforts in that sense, but also a very conscious effort to reduce water use in other areas, such as our lawn areas and Friendship Park in Mattoon. We have to kind of reduce water use just to conserve the resource. But then those poor little trees and plants, of course, are suffering, so it's kind of a balancing act to keep everything at its best state.
But it's really, for you guys, I assume, nature center, so you kind of let nature take its course. Is that true to say?
That's right. Some people do ask why we don't refill the wetland, and it is natural for this to happen. Droughts and extreme weather are part of nature, and the negative consequences of sucking all that water out of the aquifer and putting it up at the surface to be evaporated just far outweigh the benefits of having water there. We need to, let things happen as they will.
So it's very nature conservancy at the same time. So
yes, that's right. We can only hope that things will change on their own in that sense.
Right. Is there anything that Douglas-Hart or maybe other nature centers do during the year to try and prevent things like this? Is there any preparation measures, or is it just?
There are our wetlands and pond are controlled by water gates, so we can control the weather, the level of the water somewhat. Of course, as that disappears, we can't create more, but we do try to plan for the season. And just all the vegetation that we're constantly planting and maintaining out there does a huge job of keeping soil on the, keeping water on the ground and in the soil, and to prevent evaporation. That is a concern here in Illinois, since we do have a lot of open fields. Kind of increases that evaporation drastically. So the more trees we can get in the ground to prevent that, the more we can reduce the droughts.
Okay. And do you know of any other area nature centers that are seeing similar issues or problems?
Well, I'm not sure exactly on the nature centers, but I know that Lake Shelbyville, not far from us, a popular swimming site, they have lost at least a foot of water just since March of this year. So that's how quickly this stuff is moving, just a few months, and it's a big difference. I checked our stats last week, and Coles County was in moderate drought, and now this week we're already getting extreme or severe drought, not extreme drought, moving up towards us, and it makes you wonder if what's going to happen next week, what's that going to bring. So
okay, and so yeah, it is fast, and obviously it's hot too, so are you seeing decreased visitor activity at this point?
Oh, it's extremely hot, and I think we are seeing a few less people walking the trails. We do still have people coming into the nature center, which we keep air conditioned and cool, so you can still come in and relax, but we just really don't encourage long or strenuous hikes out there because of the heat and the health concerns. Although the shaded trails through the woodlands are tolerable if you keep a walking pace and bring plenty of water with you. We have lots of summer camps going on right now, and so the kids are out with us, and we carry on with the camps. We just have to reduce our outdoor time accordingly. So they're smaller bodies, they can get heated quickly playing outside. So We just kind of mix in cool-off periods and the air conditioning, water breaks with light play outside, which is, you know, I think the best idea. You don't want to stay inside completely, but you do have to be careful.
Okay. And are you doing anything extra at this point to make sure the people or animals are safe, you know, during the extreme heat?
Yes, well, we unfortunately have to limit even our work outside, although there's always lots of work to do. Last Saturday, we had 25 great volunteers show up to help us plant for 3 hours that morning, and of course the 100-degree weather made us cut that a little short, which was definitely to everyone's benefit.
Right.
But it is reducing how much time we can spend on those outdoor projects. All we can do is we do put out a big bird bath, which I would highly encourage anyone to do if they've got a small yard. We've been seeing lots of animals coming in to get access to that small amount of water. I really enjoyed watching juvenile Cooper's hawk swoop down yesterday morning and got in the bird bath and was ruffling his feathers up and like splashing water over his head, which I've certainly never seen a hawk take a bird bath like that. So that was a treat. So if you put one of these little water sources out, you have a pretty good chance of seeing something because you are going to attract animals.
So that's something that people could do at home too.
Yeah, it should be a show for you. And the animals will really appreciate it because, you know, there just aren't puddles right now or anywhere else for them to go. You'll just have to add water on a regular basis.
Make
Be sure to
it's
notice.
clean, I assume. Yeah, you want
yeah,
to do that,
the water is going to be evaporating really quickly on these hot days, so keep an eye on it.
And so is there anything that the community can do at this point? Because, you know, like you said, you can't get out and do things and outdoor projects like that, but is there anything the community could do at this point?
Definitely. Well, there's always ways to help in this situation. Putting the water out is a big one. If you can provide cover in your yard, you know, I would not suggest planting right now, but in the long run, having shrubs and bushes will not only keep moisture in the ground, but it provides shade and shelter for the sweltering animals out there. They get hot just like we do. And keep your eyes open for the animals. They're on the move right now. They're going to be looking for water. All the turtles that were in our wetland are now migrating, trying to find their next home. So be watching when you're driving. We could have turtles, even larger animals, and nocturnal animals possibly, like the coyotes and raccoons that you wouldn't expect to see might have to be on the move during the day, just looking for a refuge. So keep your eyes open, and when you do encounter those animals, just give them their space. Try to keep your distance. We might even have issues with squirrels and such moving into garages and coming into the homes because they need a place to raise their young, and they just don't really have a lot of good habitat right now in the dry weather.
Right. Okay. And so when you're talking about, you know, having to slow down outdoor work there at the center, is that going to put you behind for things you need to do in the fall?
Well, it was unfortunate that we've had this weather. We got an excellent grant last year from the Illinois Department of Natural Resources to plant all these great native species to restore our woodlands. And so we have put lots of plants in the ground this spring. And so far, most of them are still alive. We haven't lost them yet, but we're very concerned about that project and its success. So we're working hard to just keep that on track. As for putting us behind for the whole year, I think we'll be all right. Nothing's really growing right now, so that's kind of putting nature on pause as well. So I think we'll be able to catch back up when we get back out there.
Yeah, and the restoration of the woodlands and prairies and things that you do out at Douglas-Hart is very important, right? Kind of like what we just talked about.
Definitely, definitely. We've got a lot of species of plants that move into our area and everywhere in the world that don't really belong there, and it can affect the other plants, but also the wildlife that depends on their plants. So we work very hard throughout the year to remove honeysuckle and garlic mustard, and that kind of makes that ideal habitat for the animals. So that's all stuff you can take into account when you're planning your yard as well. Landscaping is what kind of species are going to benefit animals in the area, and what kind of species belong here. And that's going to affect our water supply as well.
Sure, that's good advice. So, So there's still stuff to see at the Douglas-Hart Nature Center, right? So you wouldn't discourage people from coming?
Definitely. Come out, bring water with you, and stop inside the Nature Center. The center itself is open 8 to 4 every day through the week, 10 to 4 on Saturdays, and 1 to 4 on Sundays. So come in so that you can have that cool down before and after your hike. Keep the hike short. Take a woodland path instead of a prairie path. Those can be a bit scorching right now. And, you know, just take it slow.
Okay. Well, we thank Dakota for bringing the conditions at the Douglas-Hart Nature Center into focus for us. That's all the time we have for this week, but we hope you'll stay tuned next for the Four Rivers Ag Report with Fred Peralta. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks for tuning in to Newswatch in Focus. Is there a news story happening in your community? Let us know about it. You can email our newsroom at news@weiu.net. Call us at 581-2911 or write to us at 600 Lincoln Avenue, Charleston, Illinois 61920. Your story could be featured on Newswatch or right here on this show, Newswatch in Focus. For more news all the time, visit our website at weiu.net. Thanks for watching.